Kia ora and welcome to the Can podcast. I'm the host, Warwick Slow, and we've got a very special guest today. We have the founder or co-founder of the Kiwi Adviser Network and Trail, Chuck Slogrove. Now, I'm lucky enough I get to work with Chuck every single day, but this is a fantastic insight to the brain behind the company. The way he works, his authenticity, his direction for the industry and our business in the future. It's a really good insight, even if you perhaps aren't even a financial advisor or you're in the financial services industry. This is just a fantastic one to listen if you're an entrepreneur or want to grow your business. Now, if you are following us or subscribe to us on, across the different mediums, so YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, thanks a bunch. If you're not, please do it. It really helps us grow the podcast. And remember, this does count towards your CPD points. But make sure you log in your register. But otherwise, there's a lot to get through, so let's jump into it. Chuck, welcome to the Can podcast. I know you're a long-time listener, but first-time guest.
Long-time lurker, that's right. I thought you'd never ask me to come on the podcast, Warwick.
I just wanted you to, have a bit of credibility behind you before I got you on. I think we have some of the best people in the industry. And hey, you haven't quite got there yet, but I thought, why not get you while you're on the crest of the wave, just on the rise up? And if it all goes well, hey, this might be your ticket to stardom.
Well, they do say sometimes dreams happen.
Well, look, there's so many different ways we can start this chat. I think a lot of people might be interested in the original journey of how you entered the financial services industry. And for those who don't know, Chuck is the founder or co-founder of the Kiwi Adviser Network and Trail, the software product that comes out of Can. And prior to that, you started off, you're working in a fintech or education tech, should say, in that industry prior to joining the financial services industry. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so as I was starting university, I had a fortunate encounter with a guy called Craig Smith, who started a really successful education technology business, which is called Education Perfect. And I had a chance to go and work for him when there were only 6 people working out of an office in the University of Otago back in, I think it was about 2010. And it was a really kind of formative experience for me. I got to see what it takes to start a business from scratch, kind of challenge some well-established norms, and also just see kind of what it takes to bootstrap a business. And so it was great learning from Craig over the years. And when I finished university, I decided, hey, I'd love to kind of get into business for myself, starting without much direction, but knowing, hey, software's cool, and let's kind of see where we can take things.
Well, that company now, Education Perfect, I think like a couple of years ago sold for $550 million US. And
yeah, it was a big number. Yeah, something like that.
Something around that mark. And it's just, looking at it now, like what things do you think they did differently that allowed them to get to that path where they had that massive exit?
Yeah, I think that they really understood how to build a business that had growth potential. So they focused on 3 things. The first one was having a really good software product that really kind of did something unique for their customers. And then secondly, they focused a lot on having a really strong sales team that were able to kind of properly describe the benefits. And then lastly, they also spent a lot of time really thinking about what service meant to their customers, ensuring that not only did the product meet their needs, but also it was backed up by a really high quality team that really cared about the teachers who use the product at the end of the day.
So you've got this, maybe it's piqued your interest in software. You somehow land yourself into starting a business called Broker Better,
yes,
which is it's providing leads and marketing services to financial advisors. How did you start that?
So there was actually a business before that, which if you go and Google, there may or may not still be a record of online, which was called Seeker Socks. So I took there was a random kind of every entrepreneur's journey is windy and kind of goes all over the place. And we developed a Kickstarter project, which was to try and launch some hiking and trail running socks made out of merino wool and a few other kind of materials. And unfortunately, it didn't work. But, sometimes failure is a blessing in disguise. I think, imagine where I'd be now if I was still selling socks.
Well, funnily enough, when I first joined the company, 4.5 years ago, the promo that we did for a conference is that we made trail socks, so trail branded socks that were made of merino wool, which I'm assuming you got the idea from
Yeah.
from that business, but people still talk to me about it. In fact, last week I had a meeting with somebody and they pulled up their
Well, do you want to know what's crazy?
what?
I'm actually wearing a pair of the Seeker socks right now.
Get out of it.
Yes.
Wow.
So they're at
For
least they're
those,
high quality. I mean, we have like a couple. I've got a box of old samples still kicking around. So
oh,
yeah,
okay, could be a special treat maybe for Advisor of the Year next year.
maybe.
Okay, so sock company didn't quite land on your feet
No,
there.
no. So I mean, the Kickstarter project was a failure, and to be honest, it was kind of the first time in my entrepreneurial journey that I kind of was faced with a big failure, and it was actually a massive relief. I remember the moment that I realized that the Kickstarter project wasn't going to be successful, and I wasn't going to raise the $30,000 goal or whatever I'd set. I thought, oh, you know what? I can just move on. I can move on to the next thing. I can figure it out, and I can take the learnings that I've got out of that project and move on to something new. And that was actually at the time that Andrew Malcolm, who was actually my old rugby coach and a few years ahead of me at school, was in a similar position where he was trying to find his way in his business journey. And so Andrew, who is kind of now the owner of Mortgage HQ, him and I, we started discussing kind of shared interests, and we found our way into the financial services landscape just through some research that he'd done. And I'd also studied finance at university. So we thought, hey, let's go and take a look and see if there's anything that we can do to add value in this industry. And that led to Broker Better, which you mentioned. And so Andrew and I took Broker Better through the Lightning Lab program, which was run by the Ice House at the time. And we were joined by Ben and John Krebs, who also went to Maclean's College in East Auckland. And the four of us, we tried to build a software product for mortgage and insurance advisors to help them increase their referral business. And it was a really good experience. But at the time, to be honest, I think Andrew and I, we didn't really know what we were doing in terms of running a business. And Ben and John as well, they were just learning the ropes in terms of building high quality software. So the original business, it kind of wasn't a success story, but it was a really good first step to eventually helping us figure out what we wanted to do with Trail, and then ultimately the Kiwi Adviser Network.
So you mentioned East Auckland, Maclean's College. I know the story, but to share it with the listeners, the Krebs brothers, so John and Ben Krebs, they're twins from East Auckland as well. How did you think they would be a good fit for your business or the business that you and Andrew were starting in terms of creating a software product?
Yeah, so Andrew and I, we thought, hey, okay, if we're going to need to build some technology, we're going to need to find people who have a different skill set to us, who actually kind of understand technology, maybe some engineers. And I was reading the How I Can Pack Oranga Times, and I saw on the front page a photo of Ben and John, who I recognized from school, but I didn't know them personally. And they'd won the Microsoft Imagine Cup for building a computer game on an app. And I thought, oh, these guys, they live locally, they seem like good guys, and they're obviously very smart. So Andrew and I contacted them, and they joined us for a beer down in Half Moon Bay. And we said, hey, we've got this idea for a product to help mortgage and insurance advisors generate referral business from their clients. Do you want to, would you like to give building this a go? And they said yes. So from there, we just took it. Kind of, we went from there. But they'd never actually they'd built a mobile app before, but they'd never built anything online like a web app. So it was all new territory for them as well.
I think that type of thing would really excite them. I remember Ben telling me at university, they figured out a way of, it was like making plastic conduct electricity. And just, that's how his brain works. And he had to like go away and he carried like all this like different types of sugars that he could, and he managed to do it actually, got it to a point. And I'm like, his brain works in a particular way. If you give him a problem, he wants to solve it.
Yeah, I think Ben actually has his name on a patent with the university for graphene, kind of making a new use case for graphene as a material. So that's amazing. And John also, who John is no longer in the business, but he also is an incredible engineer and kind of architect, and he's gone on to do very, very awesome things as well. So we were really lucky to have him in the business at the time.
And the podcast I did with Blandon, who co-owner of Mortgage HQ, he said that he'd tried to build a software product for advisors, and it had taken him months, and overnight the Krebs boys just built something better. Yeah. And he was like, that's where he really got that insight into terms of like their, their problem solving ability, and I think just the ability to get stuff done quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's worth reflecting on when you're thinking about starting a business, even in the advice space, is how do you find a business partner who has a really complementary skill set to yourself? Often it's very easy to walk into a situation and think, hey, this person and I, we share a lot of interests, and maybe we think the same way, therefore we'd make great business partners. But often it's actually the opposite. It's when you can find somebody who has a completely different skill set to you that you can really work well together. Obviously, having a strong set of values that you both align on is critical, but otherwise having different skill sets, I think, is really important.
So broker better didn't quite work for whatever reason.
Yeah,
What do you think that was to do with?
so I think the reason why Broker Better didn't work, aside for the fact that maybe we were quite novice in our we're at the beginning of our kind of entrepreneurial journey. I think the big thing that we learned was that we were trying to build a software product to generate referrals, but referrals are things that are given when great service is received. And so, you can go to a great advisor and you can say, I've got this piece of software. It's going to help you generate referral business. And the advisor will say, well, I'm a great advisor. I already get heaps of referrals. What is this actually going to do to add value? Right. And then if you go to an advisor who maybe is struggling a little bit at their work and you say to them, hey, I've got this piece of software. It's going to help you generate referrals. Well, if they're not providing good advice or good quality service, they're not going to get any referrals, even if you've built the product. So it was a really good lesson in needing to understand the psychology that sits behind the software. If you can have a great idea, but if it's not solving an actual problem and you don't understand how people are going to perceive that and kind of what the established relationships are between the stakeholders that surround the product, then I think you can end up going down a rabbit hole, which is ultimately what we did.
Well, I know that. So following on from there, the business, you started a financial services company called iRefi,
Yes.
now called Mortgage HQ with your business partners that you said. At what point did you say we've got to try and build our own software product to use in-house?
Yeah. So we got to the end of the Icehouse program and we realized, hey, the product that we built internally wasn't really going to fly, and we had kind of an option. Either we commit to the industry and we become an advice business so that we can learn even more about mortgage and insurance advice, or alternatively, we become a digital marketing business and we find lots of clients and we grow that. And we decided to stick in the advice industry because it was something that we were really interested in. Yeah, and so it was really interesting going through the process of signing up to do my education requirements to become an advisor, and then go through the process of actually setting up a business and realizing that there weren't a lot of high quality tools available to advisors in New Zealand. And in order to get the outcome that we wanted for our business, which was at the time to be able to service our clients online, we actually had to use 3 different systems. So we had to use a system that was provided to us by our aggregator at the time. We used an off-the-shelf CRM system. And then we also used a piece of custom software that we built for ourselves, which was effectively the first version of the online fact find and mortgage application process that's now available to advisors through Trail. And the big challenge with running 3 different systems is that you end up with 3 different sets of data. And effectively, your job becomes harder and harder to do through time. And so that was really the breeding ground for us to be able to start thinking about what would a really high quality software product be for financial advisors in New Zealand. And then we got to the point where we were spending more and more money on building a software product, and it was only serving one client, which was our existing advice business, iRefi. And so at the time, it was Ben and John and myself alongside Andrew and Blandon in the business. And so we sat down together and we just looked at, okay, well, what are our options, right? If we want to be able to grow the advice business, we have to recognize that the cost of the software is making that difficult. And so we all agreed, hey, the best thing to do is actually split the business into 2. The people who are really passionate about the technology can take the technology business and build that into a tool for the industry. And those who are really passionate about the advice side of things and actually dealing with the clients, they can take that business and continue to grow it without the cost of the software product holding them back. And it was kind of a difficult process to go through. Kind of business divorce is always challenging. But I think everyone around the table recognized that there was a really strong future for both businesses. And that made it kind of a good process to go through in the end. And ultimately, I look at where both businesses have arrived, and I'm really proud that I think we've actually been able to do more separately. And so, yeah, it was a good decision for us to make at the time.
Because at the time you'd had what 2 years as an advisor or running an advice business.
Yeah.
And I think you did significant volumes in your first 2 years. What was it, around like 200 million in 2 years of lending, which is
200. No, it wasn't quite that much, but
you inflated
yeah,
a little bit. No,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's nothing to be sneezed at.
Yeah.
How did you weigh up that side of things? Because you're obviously passionate about the advice, passionate about the software side. Do you sometimes think, could I have been better off, or could I have been more lucrative in my earning potential by just sticking to advice and just doing that for the last 7 years rather than going down the route of starting a software company and then an aggregator?
It was definitely a consideration at the time, which path to take and why. And I think that sometimes, everyone's journey is different. And for me, it was actually probably the thing that was most important was following the path that I thought was most interesting and that I thought would deliver a kind of a challenge that I actually really was passionate about trying to solve. And one of the things that I really felt quite early on dealing with advisors is that it did seem that a lot of the suppliers to the industry weren't investing into advisors and providing them with the level of service that they actually deserved. And that was something that I became quite passionate about quite early on. And so the thought of being able to build a technology product for the industry was really motivating.
I think that that line about advisors not feeling supported is still something you hear all the time.
Yeah.
It seems like some of the providers would, put themselves on a higher pedestal than the advice businesses who are their clients, and I do hear that still day to day. And it's something that I know that you've rung true the entire time I've been working with you. Do you think it's because you've been on the other side as an advisor?
I definitely think that has contributed. I always think advisors are in quite a difficult position where they're dealing with clients who are often in very difficult and stressful life events. You're going through the process of buying your first home, or, in the case of an insurance advisor, actually having to deal with somebody who has been diagnosed with a significant illness or is dealing with a death in the family. These are really, really stressful periods of time, and the advisors often have to wear that emotional weight. I think it's that combined with a regulatory environment which is continuing to change, and it requires advisors to always be a step ahead in terms of their education and the way that they're running their business. And then lastly, there's just a mountain of work to keep up to date with products and make sure that you really understand, that the commercial options that exist in the market to be able to provide your clients with the right outcome. And so I think that, often the advisors need a lot more support than maybe the market recognizes.
So after you'd split out from the advice business, you'd started Trail. You had this product that had been more or less developed in the background. It had been done in-house. It hadn't been super intentional to release to the wider market. What was that like when you, like day one of just being Trail, the software business? What was that like? What did you do? How did you bring customers on?
Yeah, well, what we actually did was we kind of started with a blank sheet of paper and said, what would a total solution look like for this market? Kind of hitting on all of the pain points that we'd experienced personally. And we took that and we put it into I remember about a 12-slide PowerPoint presentation, super simple, kind of black background, literally white text. And I went out to a number of different advice businesses in the industry, and I showed them some of the early screenshots for the product, which I've still got, and they are the product's come a long way since that original presentation. But I think the reason why, in some ways, it was easy to go from such a simple presentation into building the product was that we really understood the pain points, and getting that initial validation was quite a straightforward process. I think we also got really lucky. The first advisor that we spoke to about the new product, Rupert at Mortgage Lab, was kind of a bit of a tech visionary, and I think he'd been experiencing a lot of the pain points that we had, and was willing to kind of bring his business on board and gave us that initial confidence. Okay, we've got one business here that's ready to get started with us and give it a go. And then we just kept speaking to more and more advisors. And the good thing about the advice industry in New Zealand is that it is really supportive. And as you know, in your role, referrals continue to be a really important way for us to be introduced to new potential clients.
And when you had those meetings with advisors and you're just pitching them, there's not even really a product there. It's just a slideshow. I mean, Rupert, great, come on board. There must have been a few where the advisors were looking at you going, "You're dreaming."
I think so. And that's where the learnings from Education Perfect really come into play. It's not just about a software product. It's also about the service that sits behind it and about your abilities to sell it. And, when thinking about service, often that's the grease that, oils the cogs when the cogs might not be working that well. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that, the early versions of the product didn't have a few bugs. And, even sometimes I remember we would do launch a new version of the product or do a software update. I'd be testing it, for an hour before I was driving to meet an advice business to give them a demo of the product. I'd find a couple of bugs. I'd be driving in the car for an hour on the phone with Ben, being like, "Hey, Ben, I found this bug and this bug. Can you please try and fix these quickly before my demo, which is in 30 minutes?" So, yeah, I think it just comes back to recognizing that a software product is only as powerful as the support that surrounds it.
Well, even, the first iPhone, I remember hearing stories, not to compare this to Apple by any stretch, but I remember hearing that like the iPhone they did for that first presentation was so buggy they had to follow like a very specific process to get things to work in a way. So yeah, I think it's maybe a good reminder that not everybody's got it figured out. And I know Ben, he would sacrifice a lot back in the day, like updating the database, bringing new features on, doing data migrations for clients. I remember him telling me that he'd be working late at night and he had to wait for everybody to get off the database before he could run the update at the time. And there was some advisor that were working until like midnight, 1 a.m. And he's like, "Please just get off so and do this update."
Yeah. It's been a real journey, and it's like anything in life. You need to crawl before you walk. You need to walk before you run. And often it's the lessons that you learn when you're crawling that they actually really, really help long term, and they set the foundation for something that's really great.
So you've got the business started, you've signed up a few people, and you get to a point where you go, "We really need somebody to come in and do sales." How did you find your BDM?
Have you ever heard the saying, scraping the bottom of the barrel?
I have heard that.
Yeah,
I've also heard the one shooting fish in a barrel as well.
We've always done really well kind of bringing people into the business that are kind of through our own networks, people that we like and that share a lot of our cultural values. And so I went through my kind of list of LinkedIn and Facebook contacts and scrolled all the way down to W, and I saw, Warwick Slow. Oh, he's coming back from the UK soon, and maybe he'd like to kind of get involved in a new sales role. And so I messaged you, and I think that you were kind of on a bus somewhere in South America. And doing a bit of travel with your now wife Tara, who I went to high school with, and I think that was where we seeded the idea.
That's right, because I remember meeting you. I sat next to you. I've told the story a few times, I think even on this podcast, but I sat next to you at a friend's wedding. I don't even think we talked about work or business or anything. And when we were moving back, I had a meeting booked with a recruitment agency. It had a couple of things that I said I was going to catch up with people when I got back. I'd been doing sales in the UK, and I remember you messaged me and just showed me the software product. I remember just looking at it going, I don't really understand mortgages or insurance that well. But I remember thinking, just if I had a tool like that in my previous job in the UK, it would have made my life so much easier. And I thought that was such an important part of being involved with the company, even though I didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
Just having that confidence that that's a solution that I can resonate with, and it would have solved a problem for me. The part that I always felt funny was you sent me this email, had the videos of the software, and then you also attached your compliance handbook that you'd just written about the new licensing and legislation that was coming into force. I remember getting through to like page 10 and going, I don't understand a word of this.
Yeah, it was like a 30-page monolith of a kind of ebook.
That's right.
I needed to just kind of check whether or not you could
Yeah.
handle the kind of the other side of the industry, which is important to
Which
be able to engage with.
took time, but now, I feel like I could write something, maybe not the same quality, but I could probably
similar,
I could get the message out there, which is cool.
Oh, you've done really well.
Thanks, Papa. So, yeah, at the time I started the company, there was, I think I was the 9th person that you had. We were sitting in a small office. I'd say it was tight, to say the least. I was working at a trestle table that you had set up. And
I think everyone was working on trestle tables. The
Yeah.
picnic tables, they're very useful.
Absolutely, they keep you humble. But we had, one thing I wanted to talk about today was you've built this business up with Ben, you've bootstrapped it. There's been no outside investment.
Mhm.
I think having money is great. What is it about bootstrapping that has allowed you to grow the business to where it is today?
Well, that was one of the things that was really interesting about experiencing the early chapters of Education Perfect. They were a bootstrapped company for I think about 10 years, and the benefits of bootstrapping is that it keeps you very focused on the customer, because you don't have outside investment that can subsidize poor decision making. And it's not to say that there's necessarily a correlation between having investment in your business and poor decision making, but you don't have that luxury when you're bootstrapped. It allows you to stay really focused and close to your customers, and ultimately, I think it's a really great option for growing a business and not getting too distracted.
The company that I worked for in the UK, different industry, similar size to what Trail was when I joined. But one of the things that impressed me was how resourceful the entire company was. So, trestle tables aside, it was things like the software tools that you used. Everything was like so efficient. And the training, even when I got onboarded, I remember coming in and there was like a task with videos and content that I could read when the people mentoring me were too busy. Where I remember the old job, I just like started first day, didn't really get trained on anything and just kind of had to just like get out there and, sell.
Yeah.
So I think because you had to be so careful with every little resource when a new business joined us, that money was straight away invested into bringing on maybe like a new person in the development or another person on the support team.
Yeah.
You had to be careful.
Mm. And why don't you tell us a little bit about our retreat that we did to Rotorua for the company retreat that you organized? How many people did we have attend that?
We had, I think we had like 14 people in the business at the time, and Chuck wanted to do a company retreat, and money was a little bit tight. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was at the time, but I assume it was. And I was like, oh, it'd be great if we could get away. And I think I managed to take 14 people away for like 3 days on like $2,500, and which is unbelievable.
I know, it's wild.
At the time, my partner, now wife, was working at a holiday home company, and she said there was a discount running at the moment, 20% off. I was like, great. So I booked a house that could fit 14 people. It was huge. We did like an online shop, and we had everybody like on a conveyor belt making toasties for the entire team for lunch. But then we still did things like we went to the hot pools, we did the luge, we did like a full business planning day. And the value of that, like what we got out of it, was so much more than $2,500. But I'd love to do that again, but it'd be a completely different environment.
I know.
The bill would be a lot more, I'm sure.
I still remember the possum scratching on the shed roof where I was sleeping. But
it was the house was huge. There was like an upstairs and a downstairs bit, and I thought, I've organized it, I'll take the downstairs bit, even though it was obviously worse. And I think you did the same.
Yeah.
Take the crap bed, and then in the middle of the night, you just hear this like scratching. There's a possum breathing. And I think there was some serious soul searching at 1 a.m. hearing that.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so 1 year into me working with Trail, 2021, we started the Kiwi Adviser Network. How did that? Was that an idea that would have been thought of previously when you looked at the structure you wanted to, or the problems you want to solve for advisors?
It was a really, really interesting time in the industry. I think we were a few years into trail. It was kind of maybe 2018, 2019, and there was just a big wave of change coming for the industry. The Financial Services Legislation Amendment Bill had been drafted and was just about to be kind of enacted. And at the time, there was a lot of fear and uncertainty in the industry about what this would mean for advisors' businesses. Would they be able to continue? Would they be able to apply for a license? Is it going to be really difficult to maintain a license? And I noticed that a number of the established kind of aggregators in the industry we're taking a very specific kind of, we're going to hold the license type approach to the new legislation. And at the time, I was also hearing a lot of kind of frustrations from advisors with kind of the service providers that they had available to work with, to get aggregation services. And then one of our the businesses that we were working really closely with, Keeper, was bought by New Zealand Financial Services Group. And so that put us in a position where we said, hey, well, if there's going to be less competition in the market and nobody else is putting their hand up to kind of help provide better services in this area, why don't we do it? And that's effectively what we did. And we were really lucky to have the support initially of about, I think it was 20 to 30 advisors who said, hey, if you guys go and do this, we would be happy to support you. And so we took that to a number of the lenders, and were then able to get started with a mortgage aggregation business, which was the Kiwi Adviser Network. And it was a really, so it was a time of a lot of change in the industry. And one of the things that I did, which you already mentioned before, was I took the time to read all of the legislation that was coming up and actually think through, okay, what does this mean for advisors, and what is the industry likely to need to look like in a few years' time in order for advisors to still flourish? And that's why we've really positioned the Kiwi Adviser Network as a business support aggregator, where we're not competing with advisors' businesses. We don't have any kind of any client-facing brand. We also see licensing as something that should fit the business structure. So, we support independently licensed businesses, and our compliance team will, make sure that that your approach to compliance assurance and your compliance assurance program actually meets the needs of your business, so that you can deliver great quality advice.
Yeah, a big thing that you always pushed early on was the licensing decision should be whatever is the best commercial decision for the business.
Yeah.
That sounds great, but it was like hard to communicate when everybody at that stage didn't know what to expect. And it was like, especially being on the BDM side of things, you're speaking to all these advisors and they just, I don't know, when you get to that point, you got that sensory overload, and just any more information about compliance, you just kind of go, just the easiest solution would be the best. But now I think we're finding with some, like the lay of the land has been laid out. We've had people go through monitoring visits. There's so much more comfort and understanding in that part that it's like less of a challenge for advisors to overcome.
Yeah, and I think that the industry now is actually kind of way more educated than it was, 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that that education actually creates empowerment. And now we're starting to see advisor businesses just become a lot more comfortable with, what their regulatory and commercial obligations are, and seeing a way that they can, do right by those obligations, do right by their clients, and also continue to grow really successful businesses. And that's really my hope for the industry for the next few years, is like, let's get back to business and let's build great businesses in the industry.
I think the FMA learn a lot from our friends across the ditch who brought in a similar legislation before we did, of course. And the way that it was implemented, I remember hearing a statistic where, previously there were 24,000 financial advisors in Australia. After the new legislation came in, it went down to around the 16,000 mark. Take that with a pinch of salt, might have got the numbers there or thereabouts. But, I think they didn't want that outcome in New Zealand. They still wanted Kiwis to have access to great advice, but there needed to be some type of improvement, because
Definitely.
they need to build trust in the industry. And I think the way that they've approached it, don't want to annoy anybody, I think they've done a great job.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think that appropriate and proportionate regulation for an industry like financial services is super important. And it is really good to see that the initial monitoring process has been really supportive of continuous business improvement, which is one of the I think, most important outcomes of a compliance program. How do you continue to improve? And yeah, it's good to see that that's been supported by the industry.
Starting an aggregator is really challenging. And I've heard anecdotally through other advisors who had gone through the process and they've gone, oh, yeah, we've got about 20 advisors. We're all mates. We're going to start up our own group because we're frustrated with our current
Yeah.
provider. And it just, I've heard stories of them just struggling to get off the ground. And just over time, the maintenance and work that goes into it is it's such a challenge that it can be quite a difficult business to build up. When you made the call, we're going to do this, where do you even start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it's important to understand what type of business you want to build. And for us, as I said before, we aren't advisors. We are the support business to the advisors. And I've always seen it as, how do we empower advisors to deliver great quality financial advice in New Zealand? And in some ways, that made the aggregation piece and the compliance services a really natural progression for Trail. And so the Kiwi Adviser Network, in some ways for us, it was conceptually very straightforward and easy. But as you said, the list of things that you need to do and think through it's pretty big. Yeah.
But there's still things on the to-do list we want to do. It's just, you've got to prioritize them.
Yeah. Although I think that it is nice, the snowball is rolling in the right direction. And yeah.
That's right. Or even, we had like a to-do list at the start of the year with 70 things on it, which is now down to about 7 when we last looked. So
Wild.
yeah,
Really good.
I need to pile a few more things on there actually.
Don't worry.
Sidebar,
We'll
sidebar.
get there.
Yeah. So, I mean, fast forward to now, the Kiwi Adviser Network, I'd say, is the second largest aggregator group in New Zealand. The software product, we've got, I think close to 1,500 users of the software. Like, does it surprise you the rate that it's grown? Like, do you reflect on it and go, okay, that sounds about right? Or did you want it to grow faster? I don't know. Like, how do you reflect on it now?
I think the growth is awesome. We're really, really lucky to have grown the way that we have. When I think about the business, I just still see like all of the challenges in front of us and all of the kind of the things still to be done. And I suppose that's the kind of the entrepreneurial vision, right? You're always chasing the dragon. And for us, I just think that there's still so much opportunity, and there's so much opportunity for our industry. And so yeah, it's always good to stop and reflect on how far we've come. And when I do stop and have that reflection, often the things that I think about is just being really grateful for the support that we've received from the advisors. Especially to get Trail to where it is today has just been through a process of continuous feedback from really passionate users. And and also people giving us the grace to make mistakes along the way, and then ultimately do right by people has been really awesome.
Advisors are great at giving feedback, coaching, and most of the time they're really patient in the way they engage, especially with me. I remember when I first joined, I think my first month or two, I was on the support team, and I remember I just had like this complex issue, and you were just ask the advisor like what their take is.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the advisor will be like, oh, happy to explain. Because that's what they do as part of their job.
Yeah.
They like explaining, they like coaching. And I think that support helping us grow, and then also referring to other people that they think would be a good fit, has allowed us to get to where we are today. It's too small an industry to not have that word of mouth, which comes back to the original business idea that you had around referrals.
Yeah.
You're not going to sell me that product, are you, with the software tool to help?
It's long gone.
No, okay, damn. And the socks, those samples, maybe we should give them away at some point.
We can break some out, I'm sure.
Maybe we get a new batch bred up. So what motivates you long term? Like, where do you want to take the business?
I think, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about that recently. And I think as we continue to grow and scale within the business, we have a more important role in actually continuing to promote really high quality advice. And, we see advisors as being the best way for that to be delivered in New Zealand. So if we can help attract more high quality advisors and also grow more high quality businesses in the industry, I think that we can go a long way towards supporting advice businesses to really shape the financial futures of New Zealanders.
There is a lack of financial literacy in New Zealand. and there's a big gap between the top and the bottom in terms of the haves and the haves not.
Mm.
Haves and have nots. What do you think we can be doing better as an industry? So if you were an advisor, you're running an advice business, how would you be getting in front of a larger community so that we can increase the overall financial literacy of Kiwis?
I think that a good place to always start for an advisor is with the people that you know. I think the way that I've always thought about it is um, advisors have a natural monopoly over the people that like and trust them. And what I mean by that is, sometimes the best place to start is with the people that you already know. And if you can do a really good job by those people, then, you are much more likely to get referrals and have that network grow over time. But that is a process that organic growth process can take a bit of time. The advice businesses and the advisors that we see who have been doing really well recently are those who are much more comfortable, becoming a bit more of a public face and engaging with social media. And I always think about the way that you can uh, best engage on social media is always to think about how can you give more than you ever ask for. And so that means, what are the things that you're doing every day that might be interesting and for people who are in your network to learn about. So if you have an interesting client scenario, obviously with being mindful of privacy, what about that can you share as lessons to your other clients that, hey, if they're checking in, on their LinkedIn or, following you on TikTok or something, they might engage with you, 20 or 30 times a year. And then you're always front of mind for when they're ready to kind of take that next action point. And then the other thing that I always think about is it can be easy to think as somebody in the financial services industry that everyone has a level of financial knowledge that is similar to our own. But where advisors do best is helping those people whose financial literacy is actually potentially not that good and taking them on a journey of education alongside the advice process. So they walk out of it not only with a product that's fit for their needs, but also they're empowered to better understand what they have and why they have it. Yeah.
I think you can add so much more value to those types of customers anyway.
Mm,
I think about the type of person that might come to you. They've already got investment properties. They've invested their Kiwi Saver and they've got personal risk insurance in place. The amount of value that you could add as an advisor to them, it's diminishing returns. If you think about somebody who's never had any advice, you could really change their entire life with a 1 hour meeting.
for sure. Yeah.
In terms of the content creation part and, social media and putting your presence out there, do you think that ties back a lot to the original sort of fork in the road you had, where it was either go advice business or digital marketing company? Is that the reason why you like both those types of businesses or those business ideas?
Uh, I think at the time, one of the things that we were doing to deliver value to our clients was a bit of digital marketing support because the product that we'd promised them wasn't delivering much value. So that's why we had those two options. It was kind of like we were scrambling to create value in people's businesses by helping them with digital marketing. It wasn't necessarily because we loved it. Yeah.
Well, I spoke to somebody yesterday who has been working with you since then,
Yeah.
and he's a top advisor. And he says that, like, from the very early days, he had a lot of trust and faith in you and like the direction that you were taking. He's like, if this guy's involved,
Yeah.
I back him.
I know who you're talking about.
Yep.
Shout out to Peter Norris.
Yep.
The man, the legend, the actual first user of Broker Better back in the day was Peter Norris. And Pete, I'm sorry that we never delivered you any referrals, but I'm also glad you're a great advisor and the referrals they seem to come pouring in. So well done.
And he's still working with us, which is great. Yeah, so it comes back to that personal connection that you have with people and I'm going to say sales, but a big part of sales, or modern sales anyway, is very relationship focused. Yeah. You think the difference between doing sales back in the day, think about like a vacuum cleaner salesperson, like going door to door. It's so different to the experience you'll experience when you go to anywhere now, like a retail store, buying a software product like here. You've got to be so open and honest because the information's out there.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
reviews online. It's a small industry. And having that trust that you built in with him, it's still 5 years, 7 years. Goodness, how long is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the fundamentals of sales is that people, they want to life is too short to do business with people that you don't like and you don't trust, right? Like, why even bother? And so it's like, as long as you're continuing to try and attract people that share your values, then, sales can actually be a really rewarding process.
One thing about working with you is that you're very dedicated to keeping the ship heading in the right direction. Where I think there is always the temptation in business to, maybe go on little tangents, look at the shiny object. How do you keep the ship heading towards the North Star? Like, and are there any maybe parts you reflect on now that you're like, oh, maybe I should have picked that up or should have done that differently?
I think that, if you're the ultimate business owner, or the CEO, or in that kind of that visionary or leadership seat, your job is to always be thinking kind of 3 to 10 years out. And, you're kind of looking at the horizon, and often, things are a bit foggy, and you can't actually, you don't know exactly where you're going, but you've got to kind of roughly point the ship in the right direction.
Right. I like that we're keeping with the Nordic theme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, and as long as you're always finding the time to keep adjusting that 10-year vision, or that 3 to 10 year vision, based on the new things that you're learning, I think you put the rest of the rest of the team in a much better position to be able to really effectively contribute toward that long-term vision. Yeah,
So many times where maybe I've heard something, somebody else in the team's gone, oh, read a book, or they'll bring it in, and maybe to our benefit, shall I say? You go, not quite sure on that one. Why don't we focus on this instead? It's it, it was something, especially coming from a previous working culture. You bring an idea to the table. Just any idea is a good idea. Let's just do it.
yeah.
But I feel like this has taught me to really reflect on each opportunity that we have present to us as a business. So yeah, appreciate that. Although sometimes it is quite tough when you come in hot with some news off the press. You just want to say, let's do it.
I think it's really important when resources are kind of limited to understand that often it's, the most important business decision or analysis that you can do is around opportunity costs, right? It's is what we're doing more valuable than the next best alternative? And I think that's sometimes why maybe I'm a bit kind of
Well,
specific.
must have been tough in the very early days of the software where you've got, say, a handful of clients, maybe a dozen advice businesses using it. They're using it day in, day out. They're your only clients, and they're coming to you saying, you guys should build this into the software. How do you prioritize? I mean, you've told me how you prioritize the opportunity cost, but yeah, how do you communicate that back to advisors or clients?
I think in the early days, it was a lot easier because the product, being at its core a workflow tool, did actually need quite a significant feature set to really be a holistic product. And so a lot of the feedback that we got initially was really valuable, and it was quite an easy process to go through. Hey, people are roughly giving us this type of feedback. We're hearing it a lot. Let's just do some critique over the best way to implement it, make sure that we understand the core problem. And then, we would build a new feature in the product. As the core product has become more well-rounded, now what we need to really do is make sure that we're being much more intentional with the features that we build and the way that we spend our development resources and time. Because, what you can fall into is a trap of making a product incrementally better by adding, one or two new features a month, when you've already got so many features that people aren't actually using them all anyway. So if you've only got people using 60% of the features, what's the point in adding one or two new ones when you could be developing something that's really game changing for the users? And so that's kind of the process that I think our product team is going through at the moment. How do we, create a software product that continues to be kind of leaps and bounds ahead, rather than just incrementally a little bit better?
Love that. I think, I mean, I know this story, and I've been living in living it for years now. Is there anything else that you feel you'd want advisors to know about you or the company that they may not know already?
I think no. um,
Very
no,
open.
but the thought that comes to mind is more that just I have a lot of gratitude for our team, and I'm really thankful to be surrounded by such good people. And I think we all enjoy working together, and we enjoy the opportunity to work with our clients. And you know some of our product team, they'll go out shopping together on the weekends, and it's just really nice to be in an environment where I think we're all really enjoying the journey. And yeah, so just thank you to the team who's made this happen. It like definitely hasn't been uh, none of it would have been possible without kind of like the staff even who have come and gone, and some have come back again. Really who have been willing to jump on the boat and help Ben and I turn our vision into reality.
And on the other side of it as well, the advisor, I know we mentioned them before, but how like there's so many little things that have helped the business grow to where it is today.
Yeah,
And, it's I've used the marginal gains
yeah,
terminology many times before, but you just can't get there without the support of everybody. So,
totally.
um, in terms of your next steps, bigger picture than just Can, is there anything that excites you or other industries that you can see yourself getting involved in?
Uh, I mean, I love the process of business and investing, and definitely, I think that interested in all sorts of opportunities. But I am actually really excited by the continued change that we're going to experience in financial services in New Zealand. And I think for everyone, just watch this space. We're going to keep innovating, and we're going to keep bringing new and exciting opportunities to the industry. And we're not going to forget our core client is the advisor. Yeah,
Love it. I was going to wrap this up now.
cool.
Is there anything else that you feel we have left on the table that you'd like to talk about? And we can always cut this little bit here if you want, but
Do you want
yeah,
me to talk about our values?
yeah,
I feel like we've covered so much good stuff, and
that's what I reckon too.
I think
So,
we're good.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Chuck. Thank you so much for joining me on the Can podcast. It's been a long time coming, but just sharing your journey. I get to see it day in, day out, but it's like, I think it's amazing. There's be a lot of value for people listening to this who don't quite have that same one-on-one time that I get.
For sure.
Your vision for the business, your hard work, your empathy, authenticity. It's something I get to work with every day, and I'm glad that I got this opportunity to share it with the people who listen to the Can podcast.
Thanks, Warwick. Thanks for encouraging me on. You know that I prefer to be behind the scenes, but yeah, you're right. It's really good to get out, and thanks for encouraging me to do it.
Mate, crushed it. Thank you.